You hear singing beyond the firelight, not your language, not your tribe, but close enough that your body understands. A figure stands at the edge of the trees, broad, cold-adapted, and watching you with the same strange caution in their eyes that you feel in your chest. Another human, not quite like you, not completely different either. For most of your life, your world is small. A river bend, a hunting trail, a cave mouth black against the evening. Then one day your ancestors meet another kind of human and the story of your body changes forever. This is not just a story about extinction. It is not just a story about replacement. It is a story about contact children's survival and the ancient DNA still whispering inside living bodies today. What happened when Homo sapiens met Neanderthals and Denisovans? And is that prehistoric inheritance protecting your health, harming it, or doing both at the same time? Your species Homo sapiens began in Africa. The name means wise human, but wisdom did not make your ancestors alone. When some Homo sapiens moved out of Africa, they entered a world already occupied by other humans. Neanderthals lived across parts of Europe and Western Asia. Denisovans, known mostly from ancient DNA, lived across parts of Asia. These were not monsters. They were not half animals. They made tools, survived Ice Age climates, raised children, and carried their own long histories in their bones. Then your ancestors met them. For a long time, many people imagined human evolution as a clean ladder. One species rises, the old one disappears, the new one wins. But ancient DNA broke that ladder. In 2010, a team led by Richard Green and Svante Pääbo published a draft Neanderthal genome. A genome is the full instruction book of life written in DNA. Their result was shocking. People whose recent ancestry comes from outside Africa often carry a small amount of Neanderthal DNA. Not half, not a quarter, usually only a few percent, but enough to prove that Neanderthals did not simply vanish from the human story. They had children with the ancestors of living people. That same year, David Reich and colleagues studied DNA from a tiny finger bone found in Denisova cave in Siberia. The bone belonged to a previously unknown group now called Denisovans. The evidence showed that Denisovans also mixed with Homo sapiens, especially the ancestors of some people in Oceania and parts of Asia. Think about how strange that is. A finger bone no bigger than a small pebble opened a vanished human world. A child died in a cave thousands of years ago, and tens of thousands of years later, your species learned that it had never been alone. And then came an even more direct clue. In 2018, Viviane Slan and colleagues studied a bone fragment from Denisova cave, known as Denisova 11. It came from a girl whose mother was Neanderthal and whose father was Denisovan. Not a distant trace, not a statistical shadow, a real child of two ancient human groups. So when scientists talk about interbreeding, they are not talking about an abstract chart. Interbreeding means people from different populations had children together. Introgression means some of the DNA from one population crossed into another through those children and stayed there. That word sounds cold, introgression, but behind it were meetings. Maybe some were tense, maybe some were violent, maybe some were peaceful, maybe some were ordinary human attachments that left no story behind except a child. Can you call it love ancient DNA? Cannot tell you that. Bones do not record tenderness. A genome does not say whether two people chose each other, feared each other, traded with each other, or joined groups after hunger forced them together. But DNA can tell you this. They were close enough to meet. Close enough to touch, close enough for children to live. Now imagine one of those encounters. You are moving through a cold valley near the edge of a glacier-fed river. Your small group is hungry. The air smells of wet stone, animal fat, and smoke. Your tools are sharp, but the land is sharper. Winter takes the weak quickly. Across the valley, another group has already learned this place. They know where the reindeer cross. They know which caves stay dry. They know which plants can be eaten when meat is scarce. Their bodies carry generations of local survival. Your ancestors carry something else: movement, social flexibility, long-distance networks, and a restless ability to enter new worlds. The meeting is not simple. No ancient frontier is simple. But sometimes somewhere a child is born with ancestry from both sides. That child breathes, that child grows, that child has children too, and some of that inherited DNA survives until today. Why would any of it remain? Because DNA is not kept because it is romantic. It is kept when chance allows it or when survival rewards it. Some inherited archaic DNA probably did nothing important. Some may have been harmful and slowly removed by natural selection. Natural selection means that traits affecting survival or reproduction can become more or less common over generations. If a DNA variant caused serious problems, people carrying it were less likely to pass it on. This is one reason your genome does not contain Neanderthal DNA evenly spread everywhere. It appears in patches, like old songs remembered only in fragments. Some parts of the modern human genome are deserts of Neanderthal ancestry, meaning scientists find very little Neanderthal DNA there. One possible reason is that certain inherited variants did not work well with the rest of the Homo sapiens genome. Your body is not a drawer full of separate parts. It is a system. A useful tool in one body can become a bad fit in another. But other ancient fragments seem to have helped. One of the clearest examples comes from high altitude. In 2014, Emilia Huerta Sanchez and colleagues studied the EPAS1 gene in Tibetans. A gene is a stretch of DNA that can influence how the body works. EPAS1 helps the body respond to low oxygen. The Tibetan version appears to have come from Denisovan-like ancestry and is linked to living more successfully on the thin air of the Tibetan plateau. That is not a small gift. At high altitude, the air holds less oxygen. Many bodies respond by making more red blood cells, which can make blood thicker and more stressful for the heart. The Tibetan adaptation helps manage low oxygen in a different way. A Denisovan inheritance may have helped some humans live where other bodies struggled. So yes, ancient DNA could protect. But protection is not always gentle. Your immune system is your body's defense network. It has to notice danger quickly. It has to attack infections, but it also has to stop attacking harmless things. When Homo sapiens moved into Eurasia, they met new climates, new animals, new foods, and new pathogens. Pathogens are disease-causing organisms such as viruses, bacteria, and parasites. Neanderthals and Denisovans had lived with some of those threats for far longer. Their immune genes may have been like local survival notes passed into your ancestors' bodies. Laurent Abbé-Reicht and colleagues studied HLA genes, which help the immune system recognize threats. HLA genes are like tiny identification scanners for the body. Some HLA variants in living people appear to have archaic origins, meaning they may have come from Neanderthals or Denisovans. Later researchers, including Michael Danneman and Janet Kelso, found that some inherited Neanderthal-like variants affect immune responses, especially early defenses against infection. Other studies have linked archaic variants to responses against viruses. That sounds like a prehistoric upgrade, and sometimes it may have been. A faster immune alarm could help your ancestors survive a strange infection in a new land. A stronger inflammatory response could mean the difference between recovering and dying. In a world without antibiotics, hospitals, or clean water, a jumpy immune system might be worth the cost. But here is the twist. The same alarm that protects you can also overreact. Some Neanderthal-linked immune variants have been associated with higher risks of allergies. Allergies happen when the immune system reacts too strongly to something that is not truly dangerous, like pollen or certain foods. What once helped your ancestor respond aggressively to parasites or infection may now make your body panic over spring air. A shield can become a splinter. A survival tool can become a modern problem. This is the central answer. Prehistoric DNA is not good or bad. It is context. A gene variant that helps in one environment can hurt in another. A stronger immune response can help during infection and harm during chronic inflammation. A metabolism shaped by scarcity can struggle in a world of constant calories. A body built for smoke, dirt, parasites, hunger, cold, and danger now lives under electric light, processed food, indoor air, and long sitting. Your ancient inheritance did not evolve for comfort. It evolved for survival. The COVID-19 pandemic gave scientists a modern example of this double edge. Hugo Zeeberg and Svante Pääbo reported that one Neanderthal inherited region on chromosome 3 was linked to a higher risk of severe COVID-19 in some populations. A chromosome is a package of DNA inside cells, but other research by Zeeberg and Pääbo found a Neanderthal inherited region on chromosome 12 associated with protection against severe disease. One ancient source, two very different effects. That is why simple answers fail. You do not have Neanderthal DNA as a cute souvenir. You do not have Denisovan DNA as a curse. You carry old biological experiments filtered by thousands of generations, reshaped by migration, disease, climate, diet, and chance. Some fragments may influence skin immunity, blood metabolism, or disease risk. Most do not decide your fate. Your health is not written by one extinct ancestor. It is shaped by thousands of genes. Your environment, your childhood, your food, your infections, your stress, your sleep, and simple randomness. But the fragments matter because they change the story. They show that human evolution was not pure. It was braided. Your ancestors did not march out of Africa and erase everyone else like a clean line across a map. They met other humans. They competed. They copied. They avoided. They possibly loved. They had children. And those children became part of the future. In that future, Neanderthals are not completely gone. Denisovans are not completely gone. They survive as traces inside living people, unevenly, imperfectly, and without a voice. The tragedy is that their cultures disappeared. Their languages disappeared. Their songs, if they had songs, disappeared into air. But part of their biology remained. Maybe in an immune response, maybe in a high-altitude adaptation, maybe in a risk your doctor can measure one day, maybe in a tiny piece of DNA that does nothing at all except mark an ancient meeting under a cold sky. So when you ask whether prehistoric DNA protects or harms your health today, the honest answer is both, and neither. It depends on the fragment, the body, and the world around it. The old genes are not heroes. They are not villains. They are leftovers from lives that were once completely real. A Neanderthal mother warming a child in a cold valley. A Denisovan father walking back toward a cave in Siberia. A Homo sapiens group watching strangers at the edge of the firelight. A child born between worlds. You are not separate from that moment. Your body is one of its echoes. Every heartbeat is modern. Every cell is ancient. And somewhere deep in your DNA, the song beyond the firelight did not end. It became part of you.